We haven't done a lot in our video tutorials online here about sharpening, so I thought I'd look at two different ways to sharpen a photo. So if you've never really looked at sharpening too much, this will give you a bit of background information. Now, I've scaled down my image to fit in my filming area, but it is important to note that when you try using any kind of sharpening effect, make sure that your view is 100%. You may not scale the whole thing down like I have here, but make sure that at the very least your view is 100%. Otherwise, you'll be getting an unrealistic feedback of sharpening. We're going to duplicate the background layer, and the reason I do that is I don't want to necessarily sharpen the background itself just in case I change my mind. So one of the more typical ways of sharpening has always been to use the unsharp mask filter, which is a very good filter. And the question becomes, what settings do we use? Let's start from the bottom up. The threshold means how obvious do you want the sharpening to be. So if you put the threshold very high, you might as well just click the cancel button. So generally we use pretty low numbers. You could leave it right at 0, but generally I think most people put a pretty small number in there just so that it takes a little bit of the edge off a little bit. Then we have the radius. Again, these numbers are going to be pretty low. One of the rules of thumb that's been around for quite a while that still works pretty well is to take the resolution of your file and divide it by 200. Now, if nothing else, that tells you that you won't often be up at numbers like 6 or 8 or 10 because you just don't have files that big. And even then you can see it's more of a special effect tool at that point. So we're going to be down much more in the 1 to 2 range, probably even a little less. And then after that it becomes just a matter of experimentation. Of course, one thing to make note of, and that is sharpening will always look more obvious on screen than it will when you print. And you can always take advantage of the preview to see before and after. I'm going to push this up a little higher than I normally would so you can really see the difference before and after. Now notice when I push that high, look what happened to the edges. That's a little bit too much. But one of the things that's important to note is that's one of the reasons we did this the way we did as a separate layer, because for example at this point I can say, let me turn this layer off. Here's the original, kind of a soft focus in the center, but I really like what that's done, but I'm not too crazy about what it's done to the edges. Well, what I could easily do at this point is add a layer mask, make sure black is my foreground color. We're going to lower the opacity way down somewhere in the 20s or 30s and just basically paint around the edge. So because I'm painting with kind of like a gray color, not kind of a gray color, that means I'm lessening the effect around the edge. So it's still sharpened a little bit, but not as much, and I can go over those areas if I need to. So that's does a pretty good job. Look in the background as well, the leaves in the background, see it's accentuated that. So that's one method that works pretty well. When you really want to accentuate the edge without getting that kind of weird halo effect, though, here's another possibility. I'm going to duplicate the background layer again. This time I'm going to apply another filter under the other set called High Pass. Now the amount you put in here will depend again on the resolution of the file, but generally it's going to be pretty low, so you get mostly gray with that sort of edge highlight like you see here. I'm going to go a little higher, something like that. Click OK, and then basically you just change the blend mode of that layer to hard light, and look what that does. Wow, that's done a really nice job. Now again, if those edges are actually pretty good. This edge here might be a little bit much, but look at how nice a job that's done overall. It's got the sharpening on the inside. The edge looks pretty good without being too much compared to this one. That's pretty similar, and that's really the key, is that these are just a couple of different possibilities. Keeping in mind the whole time, of course, we are, as always, using layers to give ourselves lots of options. Once we were finished sharpening, decided which one we wanted, then we would go ahead and save a copy of this in whatever format we needed, keeping this multi-layered version so we would have that original to go back to. As always, use caution, be willing to experiment, because you can sharpen more than once, but here's, for example, sharpening the same photo several times. It's not really sharp anymore. It's just kind of weird. I'm Dave Cross. We'll see you next time.